But it was interesting that when after the first screening of My Name is Sold, and it won this big award at ITFA in Amsterdam, and the second invitation came from an environmental film festival. And she was like, it was in Paris, and she said, "No, absolutely, I want this film. Please come to Paris with the film." And that and from there it started really getting into the environmental film festival circuit, because it was a separate thing that I was not so much into, and that's how I understood really how interesting it was for environmental film festivals to show the film, because as a sort of very good example of sustainable living and a very sustainable extraction of resources. And it was really very interesting to find that the connection that I from between labor and sustainable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Now Boarding, a new travel podcast by me, Payal Nayar. This show aims at creating awareness about ecotourism, sustainable tourism, responsible travel, and a lot more. We will cover stories and journeys of people who are ecotourism specialists and those who are leaders in their field. We will also be talking to people who have had unique travel experiences, remarkable conceptual places to stay, unexplored cultures, and ancient histories of various towns and cities around the world. Join me in this journey of knowing more about travel. Get inspired to see the world and discover your inner self. Hi everyone, today I am in conversation with Farida Pacha. Farida obtained her MFA in filmmaking, and then after that she's made several experimental, educational and documentary films. Two of them that I would like to highlight here are the documentary that she made, The Seed Keepers, which won her a 2006 Indian National Film Award. And the second one is My Name is Sold, which is a film that I was absolutely blown by, and I got an opportunity to watch it. And I think it's her first feature-length documentary, and I understand that Farida has won several awards for this particular film, including the first appearance award at IDFA in 2013, which was in Amsterdam, and she's also won many prizes at Hong Kong, Madrid, and Edinburgh. Thank you so much for joining me today, Farida.
Thank you, Payal. Thank you for having me.
So Farida, I'd like to start off by asking you how you actually got interested in filmmaking.
I think it was way back in college, and I became a member of a film society. It was a small film club called the Chitra Mandal. And they used to have these monthly screenings in an auditorium in South Bombay, where they would actually project the prints of films. And that's where I saw my first Bergman, I saw my first Bresson, I saw my first Godard, and it's where I saw The Bicycle Thieves by Vittorio De Sica, and I was completely blown out of my mind by it. And it was a film that I think I was watching with my mouth like this all through the screening. And I think that is what actually planted the seed in my brain that maybe this is something I could do, something I could pursue. And I think I think the founder of Chitra Mandal probably has no idea as to how his little club sprang this seed of this hope inside me. And I'm sure I was not the only one. And this was before the time where you could watch really fine foreign films in India. You had to depend on bootleg VCDs to be able to see any of these old masters.
So, what draws you to a particular topic when you're deciding to embark on a new documentary project? What a little bit about the process.
I think for me, it has to start with an image. And sometimes it's something that I have read. But a lot of ideas don't really actually become into films. At some point, you will think, oh, this is not a film. So in My Name is Salt, for example, it really was black and white photographs that had been taken in the desert in a school that had been started by an NGO over there. And it was accompanying a news piece, a news article on the salt making process and on the school actually. And it was those pictures that triggered an interest for me because I was just drawn by how beautiful they were. And that's when I started trying to find, through friends, somebody who would take me into the desert. And so that for me, that was the bit. But then that is your first bit of research. For me, that's the first bit of research, but there has to be something more. And for me, I've always found that it has to, in some way, move me. It is really an emotional connection that I feel, for which then I feel it's worth investing because by the time you finish a feature length film, it takes between 3 to 5 years. And it's a long period of time to feel invested in it. And the only way I feel invested in it is if I have that emotional connection to the subject. And so that's the first. And in My Name is Salt, it really was, there were two emotional connections for me. It was the desert and it was the family, and it was especially the head of the family, the man, and his the passion with which he worked, and that was very moving to me because it was for something that he got very little out of in terms of monetarily, and still he gave it all, his everything that he had. So that was it. I think that is the first starting point, and then I build on that, and I, in a way that I think that I get it from the environment, the location that I'm in, and also from the lives of my subjects. Like when I would go to the desert, the first thing that strikes you is the absolute stillness over there. It is so still. There's nothing there. And there's no grass, there's no tree, there are no birds, there's literally nothing. It's just ground and sky. But it is about observation. The more time you spend observing this desert, and then you think of it nothing, it's so bare, it's so monochromatic, but you start to see all the little things that are there, the little textures, the way, the different shades of that monochrome, the how the light plays on it at different times of the day. And these are things that I really respond to visually. And the other thing is the lives of the people. So I would go there, and I've spent a lot of time with many different families while doing my research. And there was a certain pattern to what they were doing, that they would wake up pretty early, they would start at dawn working, but at 10 o'clock they would stop. And then they would start again at 4 o'clock because it was just too hot to be working in those hours. And then from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock, they would do nothing. There would be nothing going on. Maybe there was some pipe to repair or something, but there was pretty much nothing. And they could just be that way. And I came from this metropolis of Mumbai where everybody was constantly doing something. And first of all, I had to get used to that. It was like, okay, when is going to something happen? There was such a, also how in documentary filmmaking, you're constantly trying to run after some action. And this was a way of just, you had to learn how to be. And this was how, and for me, it was about how to translate these two things into my film. Because I think the form of the film has to come organically from what you are shooting. And these were two things that I knew that without this, I would not be true to what I had experienced and observed.
How did you identify the family that you wanted to follow during the process of the filmmaking? Because there's clearly more than, there must be a community of
Yeah,
the.
there are 40 to 45,000 families of salt workers. They're called agariyas. They form a caste of their own, and they are all working on the periphery of this desert, which is 5,000 square kilometers. It's a huge desert. Okay, so
Sorry, and
actually,
what's the name of the desert?
it's called the Little Run of Kutch.
Okay.
It's the Little Run of Kutch, and it's the western state of Gujarat. There are two deserts here. There's the Great Run of Kutch and there is the Little Run of Kutch. And the salt work is done only in the Little Run of Kutch. Actually, there are records going back 5 centuries that show that salt making was happening in the Little Run of Kutch. So it is a traditional occupation which is performed from generation to generation. So it's all is work that they've seen their fathers do, their grandfathers, their great grandfathers. And so they have traditional rights to do this occupation. And so when I was trying to select the family, I spent a lot of time. And what would happen was you would enter the desert and I would visit the different salt families that I could in that stretch. And then I would stay the night with one of them because there's no other place. And they're really, it's one of the most hospitable places in the world. You can knock on someone's door and say, can I stay here? And they will feed you. It's really lovely. And one of those nights, just by chance, I stayed at the family of Sanabai, who is the protagonist of this. And I was just completely drawn by him because he was an extremely intelligent, very creative man, but also a man who was very proud of what he did.
They seem to be linked to the environment to some extent, at least both with Seed Keepers and My Name is Sold. So, have they sparked any kind of conversations with reference to the environment and how important it is?
I think the one impact that it really actually has made is that everybody who sees the film says, oh, they didn't know what it takes to make salt. And that I think that is the first thing, to understand that what you use daily so casually has required this amount of labor. I think that is the first bit. In terms of environment, it was interesting because when I made the Seed Keepers, of course, it was about the environment. That was clear because it was about preserving traditional varieties of seeds. But for me, it was also very much a film about gender and about caste, because these were Dalit women who had sparked this whole movement towards organic farming in those rural areas of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. And in My Name is Sold, for me, it was really a film about work. It was about labor. But it was interesting that when after the first screening of My Name is Sold, and it won this big award at IDFA in Amsterdam, and the second invitation came from an environmental film festival. And she was like, it was in Paris, and she said, no, absolutely, I want this film. Please come to Paris with the film. And from there, it started really getting into the environmental film festival circuit, because it was a separate thing that I was not so much into. And that's how I understood really how interesting it was for environmental film festivals to show the film, because as a sort of very good example of sustainable living and a very sustainable extraction of resources.
So, I want to ask you, what's next? Have you done anything after My Name is Sold?
Yeah, I made another film, another feature-length film that I finished just after the pandemic started, actually, and which is a very different film, but the form is the same. It's an observational film, like all my films, without interviews and without narration, and just observing what is happening. But it's a film on palliative care, actually. It's a film about a team of a nurse, a doctor, and a counselor who go from home to home in New Delhi, tending to the terminally ill patients. And it's about helping them and their families come to terms with the fact that this is the end of life. And so it was a completely different kind of film, very difficult emotionally to handle.
How long did it take you to? And it's again a feature length document.
Feature length, it's 90-minute long, and it took me 2 years, over 2 years. I was shooting this film and then editing. So yeah, about 3.5 years to finish the film.
And also, I've noticed that there is cultural preservation in whatever films that, at least the two that I have watched,
Yeah.
you've emphasized the fact that it's important to for example, for in My Name is Sold, it's a whole, you were saying that for generations now, it's been like carried on one generation after another. So it's preservation of culture.
Absolutely. This is traditional knowledge. These are traditional skill sets, and they are, I think it's very important to preserve these. Just in My Name is Soul, look at these people with their bare hands and with the most basic of tools, what they're able to do. They are mechanics, they are plumbers, they are carpenters, they are weathermen. They can tell you how the weather is going to change just by the way the wind is going or the clouds. This is a lot of knowledge that they have within them. And I think also the way that they work with this environment, what are they taking out of this? Some saline water from the ground. And with that, they are able to make something that we all need. And they are not doing it for profit because they are actually earning so little. Most of the agarias are below poverty line. They are really living on subsistence. Look at the usage of drinking water. It's so little in terms of for water. They don't waste water. They are living without electricity. They are using diesel for the pump. That's the only probably polluting thing that they are doing, but that it is so little, you know, compared to all the heavy chemical industries around. And also they are living in this area, which is the home of the Indian wild ass. It's the Indian wild ass. This is pretty much its last home, the little run of Kutch. It had a much wider habitat going into western and southern Pakistan even, but for decades it has just been relegated to this little run of Kutch, and they live completely in a very symbiotic relationship with this animal. There is no conflict here between man and animal. So they are really able to be one with their environment. And in a way, I think that these traditional skills of theirs, their traditional knowledge, allows them, even though financially they are not rich, it allows them much more power and control over their lives than probably a construction worker working in some construction site in all the cities of India, whose life is much more precarious than these people who live under the open sky. I think
Yeah,
in a way, they are much more one with the environment
yeah,
than all of us.
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, wow. It's been so interesting talking to you, Farida.
Thank you.
And thank you. I know you're in Milan at the moment, and I'm in Singapore, so there is a time difference, but I really appreciate that you've been. I know it's not that early.
No, no, it's not that early. It's not that early. It's about, I don't know, maybe 11 or 11:30 now.
Okay, okay. So, yeah, no, I have really enjoyed talking to you and also getting a better understanding of how your process is as a filmmaker. And also I've learned so much more about the people who live and who have created. We didn't really end up talking at all about the seed keepers, just touched on it.
Yeah.
But I think this whole process for you is, it seems like it's absolutely, I can't think of a right word, but you're so in one with it. And I think that's what is so important. And yeah, and I hope we get to watch a lot more of your real life with protagonists talking about the realities of life, which I think is so important for us to not forget. And when telling us about things that we're not really aware. And I'm sure my listeners and viewers also must feel really in, or will feel once they hear the conversations, that they've learned something out of our chat today. So thank you so much. And everyone asks a documentary filmmaker, are you going to make a commercial feature film? I think
No,
this is a
I really can't. No,
this
I really can't imagine myself doing it. I like reality. I like reality a lot, and I like working in documentary because it's so unpredictable. I don't work with a script, and you really have to like that process where you have to be open to what happens and you have to be able to react to what happens. And this is the part I like. It's serendipity so many times. And to witness serendipity, it's the reward. It's what makes it all worthwhile
totally,
to, yes,
yeah.
absolutely. No, I have no interest in commercial filmmaking. I would rather be a wildlife biologist or an organic farmer or a potter, but in this life, I don't know, maybe you can squeeze a couple of them still in, but
I'm sure you.
commercial filmmaking doesn't enter it.
Yeah, so then we're going to see a lot more of your real life stories. And I think they're so powerful. I completely agree with you. And there's always a learning from these kind of stories. So thank you. And we'll be in touch and good luck for your future. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Now Boarding, a travel podcast. Check out other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. And of course, don't forget to share your thoughts with us. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes only on Now Boarding, a travel podcast.